welcome. Thank you so much for coming this evening. I think this is the first Urban League debate of the season, so I'm thrilled to see everybody here. My name is Kathy Navakis, and I will be your moderator this evening. Our timekeeper tonight is Sue Hillis, and she's right in the front so that both the candidates and myself can see her. We've got a lot of other volunteers, and I do want to thank them before the evening goes on too far. I'm just going, if I say your name, can you just sort of wave or, give yourself a woohoo? I'd like to thank Christopher, Marina, Leah, Selma, Susan, and Rob. Yay, thank you for volunteering and all your hard work. Before we go on, I'd like to begin by acknowledging the land on which we gather and the many Indigenous people of this region. The three long-standing Indigenous groups of this region are the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and the Lenape. I'd also like to recognize the three First Nations communities neighboring the City of London: the Chippewas of the First Nation, Oneida Nation of the Thames, and Munsee Delaware Nation. We recognize that as the Urban League members and community, we have a role to play in relationship building and reconciliation, and that reconciliation has to be about more than talk. It has to be based on action. Megwich. The Urban League of London is hosting all candidates meetings with other partner organizations from across London, including ANOVA, Climate Action London, Inclusive Economy London and Region, London Cycle Link, London Environmental Network, London Intercommunity Health Centre, London School of Racialized Leaders, London Middlesex Local Immigration Partnership, Pillar Nonprofit Network, and Young London. We are hosting 14 meetings throughout the municipal elections scheduled for October 24th, 2022. My goodness. A volunteer-run committee was struck by the Urban League of London and has been meeting since January to organize these meetings. The committee is comprised of individuals from various organizations across the city and set the goal of encouraging participation in local government and the political process. The committee has invited all candidates to participate. Along with the partner organizations, the committee created a list of important questions to ask the candidates. We do ask that everyone here today be respectful to the candidates and your fellow audience members. We would also like to encourage those of you in our audience who use social media to tag the Urban League in their posts. It can be at Urban League of London or at ULLDN, or use the hashtag LDN votes. We also want to thank Goodwill for their support in providing this meeting space. Exits are at the back. There's elevator and stairs. We also thank the London Community Foundation for sponsoring the all candidates meetings and remind our audience of their 2021 release of the Vital Signs report, Be the Change. Vital Signs is a biannual check-in on how we are faring on issues that are significant to the well-being of the quality of life of London residents. The latest report focuses on making systemic change by coming together to participate in collective action. Their report is available online, bethechangelondon.ca. And a big thank you to Rogers, who are filming this and looking after the sound and broadcast quality, and this will be broadcast on Rogers TV. So, enough of that. Let's get to the ground rules on how this debate is going to work. I will draw the candidates' names from a hat to determine the speaking order. Each candidate has 2 minutes for an opening introduction. Our first candidate will draw from my box a question. They will be given 2 minutes to provide their answer, and then each other candidate will be followed by a 1-minute rebuttal. This will continue until each candidate has drawn at least one question from my box of questions. And then candidates, please make sure you speak clearly and into the microphones. Once every candidate has completed a question from the hat, the box, we will then select questions provided from the audience. We have a number of questions that were sent in advance, and we will work through those. Once we've done all of those, we will go back to the box questions until the end of the meeting. How the timekeeping works. Sue, who is sitting in the front, has 3 cards: a green card, a yellow card, and a red card. When your allotted time begins, the green card will be held up. At the 30-second point from the end of time, the yellow card is held up. The red card is held up when you must immediately end your answer. As moderator, my job is to move the night along to ensure each candidate is treated fairly and has the same amount of time as the other. I'm strict. You'll obey. You'll be good, right? Thank you. Sure. Because you're awesome. Thank you. And before I begin, we do have some of the school board candidates that are here, or running for school board trustees. Christine Morgan and Lorianne Pizzolato. I'm not sure if I pronounced that, I'm so sorry. Thank you. If you're here, raise your hand, and if you want to speak to these ladies after, please do so. Okay, I'm going to draw names from here. I'm going to put it over here. I'm not looking. Well, okay, they disappeared. I'm so, like, the little slips are really, really tiny. It looks empty, but they're how tiny they are. And okay, the first name is Jeremy McCall. Second name is Skylar Franke. And then there it is. It is in there. Oh my goodness. And the third name is Paul Michael Anderson. Sorry about that. There you go. Okay, I'm going to put the questions in the box. So they're all here. Let's do things. I wouldn't. It is. It's very dramatic. So we'll do this. And then, Jeremy, you go first. Pull one. I'll read it. Okay.
I'm sorry, you read it. Sorry.
I'll read it.
All right.
Okay, thank you. The first question, and Jeremy will have 2 minutes to answer this, and then we will go in order. Skylar, you will be the first to rebut, and then Paul Michael, you will be the third. The current city council was the first in the country to add in a pillar to the city's strategic plan that specifically focused on making London a safer place for women and girls. How will you, as a city councillor, work to ensure this important pillar is executed? With record numbers of femicide in Canada, what are the opportunities you see available to address gender-based violence by the City of London?
So that question, that hits extra close to home for me because I grew up in and out of women's shelters myself, and I've really gone out of my way from adulthood to involve myself however possible in terms of being a good advocate, being a strong leader, leading men in fulfilling their duties and ending gender-based violence. So for those in the room who don't know, I founded and run an organization called Dad Club London. We have 1,400 members. Dad's really kind of stretching from Kincardine all the way to Brantford, and we really go out of our way to educate ourselves on our responsibilities as men and as leaders, and to support organizations that are providing the essential on-the-ground services and to meet people individually in need and give them what they require in order to move forward. We have a Safe Cities initiative as part of the pillar for supporting women and girls in our strategic plan, and really we need to come to the table as leaders and just set the tone. And really this is something that anybody in this room can do. We can't just say, hey, City Council, you fix it. Any man in London, you play a role as well in just being a good person and asking, how can I help? And you know, as a Ward 11 leader, I'll bring people to the table and continue to provide the support that I've already been supporting.
Yeah, thank you. Skylar?
Quick question. Are we doing opening statements later? Sorry, I was just wondering.
Oh, I'm so sorry, yes.
No, it's okay. I just wasn't sure if you rearranged it, so I just want to check.
It does look like, in here, there isn't a thing about opening statements on my script.
We could do them later. If you want to keep doing the questions. Yeah, do you want to finish these and then? Yeah.
When would you like to do them?
It doesn't matter to me. I was just wondering.
Thank you. Yeah. I apologize, but that's not in here.
Yeah. All good. Should we keep doing this question and then maybe do the,
Sure,
Yeah?
let's finish this question, and then we'll
Okay.
do opening statements. I apologize.
and we both get 1 minute, right? Just, okay, wonderful. All right, great. Thank you for the question. Yes, like Jeremy said, we do have a Safe Cities Committee that has made a Safe Cities Action Plan, working with a lot of the various women-led groups that are working in this sector, like the London Abused Women's Center, ANOVA, and Safe Space. And I've met with staff at a variety of these organizations and heard that they'd really love to see funding put to the Safe Cities plan. So the plan was approved, it's a pillar in the city's strategic plan, and yet there's no funding available for it, as well as I understand it's only like a partial staff person's responsibility. So it'd be lovely to see staff resources allocated to the plan too. And also, again, allocating funding to affordable housing, because a lot of women during this time are living with their abusers. And one of the key ways we can make sure that they're safe is if they have their own space to live and they're not living with their abusers. So that would be another area that I would focus on. Thank you.
Thank you, Skylar. Paul Michael?
Hello. So my answer to this is pretty simple. Where it's in the city's legal power, we need to follow through with the 94 calls to action of the Truth and Reconciliation Committee, because the tenets in that it's just the beginning to if we have a plan to follow through. Thank you, yellow card. If we follow through with the 94 calls to action, that will make the biggest dent in violence towards women, and then we can recover our missing and murdered Aboriginous women. Thank you. That's my time.
Thank you. So do you want to do your statements now? Yes, let's do that. And we'll go in
Sure.
order, the same, do we want to do that same order? Jeremy, Skylar, Paul Michael?
Yeah, you're good with that?
Let's go the other way.
Oh, okay.
No, that doesn't care.
Okay, let's do that.
Sure. So how long do I have for opening statement?
2 minutes.
2 minutes once again. Who am I? It's here? Okay. Perfect. I wasn't sure who I was looking for. Okay, so 2 minutes. All right. So my name, as we know now, is Jeremy McCall. I am running for Ward 11 for City Council for the simple reason that I've lived in Ward 11 since 2011, and I see a lot of good in our neighborhood, but I also see a lot of better. I think we are missing a lot of essential opportunities, both as a ward and as a city, to really step up our efforts on the community level and to create bigger and better change that impacts more people. London's one of the fastest growing cities in Ontario. 440,000 people, I think, is our most recent estimate. And we have a city that's the biggest island in southwestern Ontario. People keep coming to us looking for more. Our poverty gap keeps widening. Our opportunities for children are not being examined and pursued, both at the school board and at the city level. We have a lot of people struggling right now. I've worked in social services for 14 years, in mental health and community supports for people with chronic illness, and in helping people with barriers to employment, ODSP, OW, find work, as well as volunteering in 3 or 4 organizations at a time. Places like ANOVA, places like my Dad Club London, the London Public Library Board, and then my home and school for my kids. Because I see the change, I know I can bring the change to the table, and I know that there's a lot of people who feel they have nowhere to turn, and they need a powerful voice at their side who's bringing forth the issues and not giving up until they're resolved. When I'm not trying to save the world for 1 million hours a week, I have 3 kids at home. They're 5, 7, and 9. I love to take them on adventures, play sports. I have a golden retriever named Duncan. My wife, Joy, she works in healthcare as a frontline hero for the last 2.5 years. Not 1, but 2 hospital jobs. We're real people. We're in the public sector. We're not getting raises because the economy's terrible, and we're still doing our best for ourselves and each other every day. And I've seen just for the last 8 years that more can be done, and I feel that my track record shows what I can do. And boom.
Thank you. Okay, Skylar?
Good to go. Awesome. So again, my name's Skylar Franke, and I'm so happy to be here, and thank you to the organizers for putting this together and giving us this great opportunity to talk with you all about important city issues. I also live in the ward. I live in the Coves neighborhood with my partner Nick and our new baby Rory, who's a month old, and he's hanging out at home, and our 2 cats, Mr. Fish and Taco. And I really love hanging out in nature. That's why I live in the Coves, and I enjoy reading a good book. And my love for the nature and the environment is really one of the main reasons I wanted to run for city council. I've worked in the environmental sector for the last 10 years, both planting trees and building green infrastructure in our community at Reforest London, and then also running the London Environmental Network, where we're trying to combat climate change, working across the nonprofit, business, and institutional communities, trying to reduce our emissions. I've also served on many community boards and been very active doing community work and building community. So I've sat on the Urban League of London board until earlier this year, and then also have started the Coves Community Association as a way to get to know my neighbors and build a sense of belonging within our community. And I've served on many city advisory committees, more you can check out on my website, but a lot of that work has shown me firsthand how the decisions that are made at City Hall impact the lives of the average Londoner. And another reason why I want to run is because of that experience that I've had. I'd really like to see a city and a city council that's taking bold action on issues of affordability, climate change, homelessness, safety, building a welcoming city. These are huge issues that we need to be tackling, and I think council has, made progress on a lot of areas, but I'd love to see more. So I'd love to count on your support on October 24th when you go and cast your ballot. But otherwise, if we don't get a chance to answer your questions tonight, I'd really just love to have a conversation with you. So please reach out afterwards, because I'd really love to hear what matters most to you in the community.
Thank you, Skylar. Paul Michael?
Hello, neighbors. My name is Paul Michael Anderson. I'm a 41-year-old dad and unionized auto worker. But first, I'd like to thank our hosts, the Goodwill, and Skylar's friends at the Urban League. Also, thank you for putting this on. I appreciate that. And I don't come from the same sphere of public health as my colleagues here. It's the reason why I'm running. If there's an issue that's important, and there is one for me, because it hits close to my house. If it's important for you, you need to go out into your community and talk about it and share that with your neighbors. There are people living in our parks, and that is unacceptable to me. We've had our neighbors who have died, and people just walk past these people. And if it's something that's important, like having more empathy, all the degrees in the world and having all the public jobs in the world might not really be the simplest. It's the simplest answer, which is just build the houses and have opportunities for our neighbors to not die. The reason why I'm doing this is I don't want to be sad. I can't go to the park and bring my kid or my dog there and have to explain. The establishment, our municipal leaders aren't doing enough, and they're not caring enough to deal with our neighbors who are living in our parks and have died in our parks. That is what is compelling me to run this year, and it should compel everyone else to do more, and should have compelled our leaders previously to do more. I'm running because I think we can do better. That's my time.
It's your time. Okay, thank you, Paul Michael. Okay, Skylar, it's your turn to pull a question. Ooh, this one will be fun.
All right.
Okay, I don't know what it is, but it'll be fun. Okay, it's about housing. The federal government's new National Housing Plan aims to cut chronic homelessness by 50% in the next 10 years. Currently, London faces critical challenges in providing safe, adequate, affordable housing. What role do you see the municipal government taking to help achieve the 50% reduction? Skylar, you start, and then we will go with Paul Michael Anderson to rebut, and then Jeremy.
Awesome. Thank you. Good to go? Awesome. So like Paul Michael said, we have seen a lot of people who are facing chronic homelessness in our community. I personally believe in a housing first model, which has been a lot of the approach that has happened in London. We have over 1,000 people living in the community who are chronically homeless and over 6,000 people who are on the affordable housing waiting list. And so we know that this is an incredibly important issue to deal with, and we see it visibly in our parks, along the river, downtown, in our urban core areas. And as somebody who believes in a housing first model, I would like to see everyone in housing that they can stay in. And a lot of people who are suffering from chronic homelessness do have maybe multiple issues. So I would love to see more wraparound services. Indwell's model, which Indwell's a local nonprofit, they do a lot of housing but with supportive services. So people who have mental health issues or suffer from drug addictions, they're given the services they need in residence. I also believe we need to be accessing more federal funding, which again, the federal government is allocating a lot to this issue, and the city has taken advantage of some of that. And I do think we need to be building medium and high density infill within the city so that we can make sure that the units we are offering meet the needs of the community that they're serving. And I'd love to continue working with the nonprofit sector. Like I said, Indwell is just one of many that is doing excellent work in the community to both house those who are suffering from chronic homelessness and who need wraparound services. I also think we could be funding a lot of this, because I know, what I'm talking about sounds like it's going to raise your taxes, but I do think we can look at other revenue sources like a vacant homes or a vacant storefront tax and take that money and invest it in affordable housing. So I'd really love to see that looked at. I know, again, City Council is examining that as an option, and I'd like to see it move forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Skylar. Paul Michael?
Hi. If I'm elected, I think my goal will be to block obstructionist policies. We need to focus on mixed density housing, and there are community groups, special interest groups that don't want housing developments in their neighborhood, and I think their opinions certainly are valid, but I think we can move past that. I think we need to to have more affordable housing. We can use our own revenue sources and build our own housing, and anyone who blocks that, I think that will be my goal, to convince them otherwise. Thank you. That's it.
Okay. Now, Paul Michael, it's your turn to pick. Oh, Jeremy, I am so sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Good. Okay. So Ward 11 is not a safe place for homeless people. I mean, we can accept that all as a fact. You can go on the Facebook groups. You can see people saying somebody's on my street, they don't look savory. On this stage, I'm probably the person who knows the most homeless people and has done the most for them. And let's be realistic that as a city, we're not helping them right now. We're not building quickly. We're getting in our own way. We're micromanaging the people who are trying to do the buildings. We're trying to tell them what to do. We're not understanding the issues at hand. Halfway there already. Perfect family-sized units. We've lost bonusing. We need to support Josh Morgan, 50,000 houses in the next 10 years, 50,000 units. London Community Housing is doing great work. Reimagine Southdale, they're building for the first time in 60 years, turning townhouses into apartments. Let's do more of that. Let's try to fix the provincial OW, ODSP rates. Let's bring a rehab facility to London, and let's get some of those 700 beds back that we've lost in the last 10 years. We're building a bigger hole, and we're not getting out of it anytime soon.
Thank you, Jeremy. My fault. Okay. Paul Michael?
This is probably the best question.
Okay.
I hope. Oh,
Well, we'll see.
sure. Oh, please read it.
I have to read it for everybody to hear it.
It's mostly triangle shapes.
Okay. What are the three most important city services to maintain and grow? Explain why you picked these. Paul Michael?
Yep, I have that in my notes. The three most important services, public transportation, we need to, it's been so underfunded and it's been a half measure, and by the time we get this current version of our public transportation system up, it will be antiquated, and it's a half measure of a half measure. So number one, have a usable public transportation system for working class people to get to their jobs, number one. Number two, my second priority, I'm sure it's on this piece of paper somewhere, is making sure our homeless neighbors aren't dying in our parks. So that is my second priority. Was that the question? I hope so. And my third priority is holding our upper levels of government to account for the 94 calls of action that they need to do, and all of those calls to action will trickle down and help every aspect of our communities, whether it's with homelessness, whether it's violence against women, whether that's the education gap. Do that, we have the answers. You need people from the bottom to push, and then we can get the things that we need to have done. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. Jeremy?
Right. City provides at least 34 services I could think of off the top of my head. Picking three is kind of difficult, but we all know in this room housing is far and away the most important topic. As I mentioned in my last question, we have not built new rent-geared to income housing units in about 60 years, and that's going to get us forward. People with these affordable units are not going to move forward unless they get rent-geared to income. Number two, transit. I work in employment services. I help people on OW, ODSP, experiencing homeless, barriers to employment, gaps in employment, get work. They can't get to work once I get it for them because the transit system is just not getting the job done. I found somebody a job, 8-minute car ride, 61-minute bus ride. She has kids in school. It's just not an option. Service number three is the police. The police obviously have a giant role in a fast developing city with a lot of issues. 940 some odd calls a day. I've done ride-alongs in St. Thomas where we actually drive around and look for ways to help, and then you come to London and you're waiting 3, 6, 9, 12, 24 hours. I'm waiting up to 12 months right now for, there we go. Cool.
Thank you, Sue, doing a great job, and thank you, Jeremy. That's great. Skylar?
Thanks. So for me, the three most important city issues that I think we need to be investing in and growing are issues that are addressing, are solutions that address our existing issues. So transit, neighborhood services, and community housing, similar to both the gentlemen up here. But I believe that root issues that we have in our community of affordability, of having a welcoming city, of addressing climate change and homelessness can be addressed with those city services. So investing in transit, both rapid transit, but then transit that goes throughout our neighborhoods and connects smaller routes, able to get people to jobs, to school, to visit their friends, as well neighborhood services. So the city runs a couple great programs like neighborhood decision-making services, the Spectrum programming, various community centers, and that's where people go to spend time and where they can find friends and feel like they belong. And then community housing, again, trying to address homelessness like we've already talked about, one of the largest issues we have in our community. So being able to invest both in our community housing and in the services that we need. Thank you.
Okay, now that we have answered a question from the box, everyone has answered a question from the box, we're going to turn to some audience questions, and these were submitted when people registered. So I'm going to read some of those, and I don't know if those audience members are here, but we will be reading these. And the answers are limited to 1 minute each for each candidate. When we get through these questions, if we still have time, we will go back to the box. We will start with Skylar, because it's your turn this time. The first question, and this is from Margaret H. What are your thoughts on Vision Zero, community safety, Farquharson Arena, raw sewage entering the Thames, flood control?
Great.
1 minute. 1 minute.
I can't even remember all of those.
I don't know. So,
Can we ask Margaret to pick one?
Margaret, is there one that is more important to you that we can address?
How about the raw
Okay, so what are your thoughts on that?
Hate it. No, I'm just kidding. I have a longer one. Okay. So I've spoken out a lot about this issue working in the environmental sector. This comes up every year when we have extreme flooding events, which we're going to see more and more of with climate change. The Thames River, which is also known as Deshkanzibi, unfortunately ends up with a lot of rust sewage, so it doesn't go into people's homes. I would like to see some proactive solutions, so separating the combined sewers. The city has been doing it for many years, but I'd like to accelerate that. And Turner made a really great pitch earlier, a couple of years ago, trying to allocate more funding to that solution. Also would love to see more investment in green infrastructure that keeps water on land, so investing in trees and parks so that doesn't end up backing up our sewage system. Working with farmers as well to reduce the phosphorus in the river to clean it up. So again, a lot of E. coli comes off of farmers' fields, so putting some buffers there. And then depaving our urban areas. Again, I work in an area and we've done a couple depave projects, but we need to remove as much asphalt as we can so we keep water on the land and instead going into our sewers and the river.
Paul, Michael?
I'm supposed to answer the same question?
Yes. Yes, and we're
Fantastic.
focusing on the raw sewage.
Oh, okay.
Like,
So what the city really needs to do with that is try to keep up with the infrastructure gap in our water and sewage department. It is the biggest struggle to have our workers have to pull out and replace and modernize our infrastructure at the speed in which it decays and at the speed that the amount of human capital, like the actual workers, can actually pull that stuff out of the ground. So we need to invest with more jobs in that so we can keep up and shorten the infrastructure gap between when things break and like when we need to have them replaced. And also I think we can hold our rural neighbors to account for their aiding to having phosphorus dumped in our river with poor farming practices. I think that would also help. Those are my 2 points for that specific question. Thank you
Okay,
for
thank
asking
you.
it, Margaret.
Yeah. Jeremy?
So I first heard about this question and a couple weeks back, and I asked an expert, I said, why does this happen? He said, it happens. It happens because we have 100-year-old pipes where storm water and sewage run through the same system, through the joint sewers, as Skylar mentioned, and it has to go either into your basement or into the river. We'd prefer it didn't go to either, but that's a titanic undertaking right now for a city that's been here for 150 or so years, and there's a ton of work to be done, and we're not gonna do it unless we make it a priority and unless we bring in outside funding, because as a city of 440,000, we have the same budget our school board of 67,000 or so students has. So there's limited options, and there's gonna have to be more people coming to the table to resolve it faster.
Okay, thank you. The next question is from Brent M. And it is also a two-parter. Is Brent here? Hi, Brent.
Did some miscommunication on the box. It seems like we all thought we could put multiple questions in there. Just pick one and read it.
Well, you've got a two-parter. Okay, which, do you have a preference, speed or garbage?
Doesn't matter. You pick.
Okay, are you more open to, more speed-reducing measures within Wortley Village? And this will start with Jeremy.
Yes, as a Wortley Village parent of 3 small children, the speed through the village terrifies me. I do not feel safe or comfortable allowing my kids to play in the street or ride bikes through our neighborhood. Our main artery of Baseline Road is about this big and this big with our 2 lanes, and really our option becomes ride on the sidewalk, cross your fingers, you don't get a ticket. That's unacceptable. The drivers are even worse. My house backs onto Commissioners. It's a racetrack most nights of the week. Our traffic enforcement options are quite limited, and the police need a bigger budget in order to be able to do more. And really, we can do some creative things. I'm from New Zealand. We do sound decibel cameras. We do unmarked cars with cameras in them with radar guns. We do a lot of secret stuff to keep people alive. And we should do that in Wortley Village as well, because our families and our kids deserve it.
Thank you. Skylar?
Yeah, I hear actually this question a lot when I'm canvassing. So literally last night I was canvassing and somebody was complaining about speeding on their street. And it doesn't matter if it's in Wortley or in the other side of like Warncliffe and Berkshire area, if it's on a major route, if it's on a really small dead-end street. Every street that I've gone on and talked to, speeding comes up at the door. I would love to work with the community to try and address this. So various different measures can be implemented if it crosses a threshold. So speed bumps, radar guns, ticketing blitzes so that we can have police officers, handing out tickets when it's actually occurring, because the worst part is after somebody speeds by, you can't chase after them with the ticket as much as you'd like to. So I'd be more than happy to work with the community, the Wortley community, trying to address this, because I feel it too. I live on Springbank and people will go down that street at 80 kilometers an hour, and it's super frustrating and really is not really a great use of the space. So I'd really like to see speed limits lowered. I know they're going down to 40 kilometers in Wortley currently. I would have loved to see 30, but yes, I'd love to work with it.
Thank you. Paul Michael?
Hi, I might not need the entire minute to say yes, absolutely. As a cyclist, I'd like to not get killed. Our neighbors with children, my colleagues here who have small children, yes, slow traffic down, please. My relatives that live in Edmonton, and they have programs where they, if you go over 40 kilometers in school zones, the city could use it as a revenue creating program by being more punitive to drivers that want to endanger our children, and cyclists as well, and my dog. Slow down, please. We have things to do tomorrow, and we need to be alive to do them, so thank you.
Okay, thank you. Skylar, we'll start with you on this question. And this is from Sharon D. Do you live in the ward you are running in? Please tell us something about the ward.
Would love to. Yes, I live in Ward 11. I kind of mentioned it already at the beginning, but I live in the Coves neighborhood. So I recently, throughout the pandemic, have become a birder. My partner loves birding and takes us out for hikes. In fact, this morning he took a bunch of friends out. So I really love living in the area because you're able to walk through the coves. You can see, last time I went out, I saw 6 great blue herons, an egret, an osprey, and a bunch of other little birds. So if you enjoy hiking and you'd like to get to know the Coves area, I recommend you swing by. You can also bring a kayak. It's a really peaceful area to kayak in. But one thing that I just love about the ward is how great all the neighborhoods are. So there's Wortley, Manor Park, Kensal Park, Berkshire Village, the Highland area. So lots of different things to explore and enjoy.
Thank you. Paul Michael?
I've lived in Ward 11 since coming back from college. I grew up in the Soho neighborhood, and then I moved to Grand Ave once I came home with my college diploma. The best part about living in Ward 11, I would say, is probably Piero's Pizza. That is, there are a lot of nice places. It's nice there are a lot of parks you can take your dog to. There are good schools, but our parks have people dying in them, and that is what I'd like to focus on, which is not as nice as pizza.
Okay. Jeremy?
All right, so I came to Ward 11 in 2011 when my wife and I decided to move in together. I said, I have a big house in Ward 4, you want to move in? She said no. She said, come to my tiny house. I live around the corner from my work. My neighbors are incredible and you're gonna love them. I moved in and 24 hours later she was fully correct. I'm not gonna say lots of flowery things right now. I'm talk about something we've gotta do better. As a leader of children and parents, we don't have sports facilities in Ward 11. Let's make that a priority. I played in this church softball game on Sunday. We mowed base paths into Thames Park without permission, don't tell anybody. We painted some lines and we made our own baseball field because we don't have them. We don't have enough baseball, we don't have soccer, we don't have a dog park other than Greenway, which is way up in the top corner of the ward. We don't invest in recreation in Ward 11, and people have not been championing that for some time, and if I come to council, you're gonna hear more of it than you wanna hear, to the point where you're gonna do this, because I'm not gonna stop talking about it.
Thank you. And then we're going to go to the next question, and we'll start with you, Jeremy. Have you read this is from Graham B. Have you read the London Plan? If no, why not? If yes, what do you think about it? Ooh.
So I've skimmed through the London Plan. It is a giant document, and I do still have a full-time job and 3 volunteer gigs that I can't walk away from. But one thing that I do is I do talk to people who know what they're talking about. And so I think the London Plan, it is a good plan. It does have a lot of promise for the future for our city. It totally missed on the growth projections. It totally missed on really the best way to zone to fix our infill density and to make higher residential, downtown, making more people live downtown and on transit lines. A lot of things we need to do better in the London Plan right now, and we need to start looking at things like, let's not force all the doctors and all the offices to go downtown so that everyone drives downtown and parks a car and creates traffic jams and does bad things for climate change. We started off on a really good foot, but there's a lot of work to be done, and I'm ready to read the plan when I get voted in and to start chipping away on the things that need to be better.
Skylar?
Yes, I will be honest, like Jeremy, I have not read the entire document, but it is sitting on my desk, and it honestly is about this thick. But I have definitely read through various sections of it. It was the largest public engagement process that the city has ever undertaken, and spent a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of energy, and a lot of your time telling the city what you want to see and how you want to see our city built. So I think it is an absolutely crucial document that we use and we follow, and too often we create plans and then we don't fund them and we don't follow them, and they're used as door stops, and mine's used as a computer monitor lifter, but I really do think we need to be following it. To Jeremy's point, I agree, a lot of projections unfortunately have been somewhat outdated because it's 8 years old, and it was delayed by a lot of appeals at the provincial level with developers. So again, some projections have changed, but overall the bones of the London Plan are really fabulous, and it's all about creating walkable and vibrant communities. So I would love to follow the London Plan if elected.
Paul Michael?
The London Plan is certainly like a tome of burden, and I'm happy that it provided some university students a very long writing job. There are some elements about protecting our waterways that are good, that are mentioned, and our floodplains. Some of that could have been done at other levels of government. So, like, that's the highlight, I think. It wants to protect our waterways and our green spaces and our environmentally sensitive areas. Again, it is a half measure on its statement to do with public transportation. Density is fine, but I do think we should hold the developers to more scrutiny with some punitive measures in our tendering of the contracts there. And I think that's my time, but I can talk more about it later.
Thank you. Okay, and then we're going to start with Paul Michael on this next question. This is from Darlene G. Are you here, Darlene?
Hello, Darlene. I hope this is an easy question.
Well, it's like 3 or 4 questions. So what I'm going to do is
I'm an Aquarius. My favorite color is green.
No, those aren't them.
I'm
I'm going to
41.
have to. I'm going to pull from this, and I'll pick this one. Some parts of Ward 11 were excluded from the last LTC bus transportation improvements that were made. What will you do to ensure that Ward 11 gets better public transportation, bus service not only concentrated in bus hubs, but to all parts of Ward 11 and the west end of London, Ontario?
I think what we can do that will make public transportation and our bus systems for our Ward 11 residents, the biggest improvement is investing, which it's been neglected for decades, is paratransit. So I think that's what we need to do, is dump money into that first, because if our neighbors who have mobility issues can't be where they need to be, we have failed, very important members of our community. So that is what I would like to have done first. Would you like to talk about the last subject? But hey, public transportation, if that is my only goal, if we're gonna improve it in one way, it will be paratransit for our neighbors. There are a lot of older people in our neighborhood. My mother, my stepfather, my elderly neighbor who is going through cancer treatment. These are services that they desperately need, and it's been underfunded forever. Some more needs to be done.
Jeremy?
Yes, 1 minute is not enough time to talk about this.
That's why I picked it.
Am I already going? Do I wait for the card before it officially starts, or is it as soon as you say my name? It's not really clear. So when the card comes up, okay. All right, I don't steal any extra time. I applaud you, Paul. Thank you for talking about paratransit. I work for Hutton House Association for Adults with Disabilities. Paratransit is a nightmare. Nobody knows what they're going to do 3 days ahead of time, and even if you do know, you might not get a ride, so that's not good. It's neither here nor there. I met with Cheryl Ruth from the London Transit Commission Board. I fully believe there are lots of wonderful people in that office on Highbury who need a bigger and better building, who want to do good things, who currently cannot get enough buses. They're 9 months or more behind. They can't get enough drivers. It's a unionized job. Another city comes along that's commutable, says we can give you a couple dollars an hour more. New drivers are gone. We need to look at the flows of our residents. Where do you live and where do you go? You shouldn't have to take 3 buses to go up, and then all of a sudden you're back at your destination. Natural movement, north, south, east, west, into areas we work in. Just make it make more sense is my biggest concern in the way that we can start fixing things, by coming together and working together.
Thank you. Skylar?
Yeah, I was just gonna wait for Sue. No,
That's
it's okay,
okay.
Sue. Awesome. Yes, I also, like Jeremy, met with Cheryl Ruth. She sits on the LTC Commission, the London Transit Commission, and had a very similar conversation. So I think step one would be, as city councillors, understanding how the LTC works and meeting with the staff that work there and the people that sit on the commission, because I heard a very similar story about having better bus routes within neighborhoods. So not only trying to invest in our rapid transit lines, which we unfortunately only have the south and the east end, would love to see west and north in the future, but also trying to invest in the bus routes that are within the community and neighborhood, so people, again, like Jeremy said, don't have to go downtown in order to, go back on themselves. So that would be really lovely if we could do both, rapid transit and better bus routes within neighborhoods.
Thank you. Jeremy, we'll start with you on this question. The next one is, this is from Carolyn C. Are you here tonight? Maybe, or don't want to put your hand up, that's fine. As a low-income senior, what are you doing about making sure my taxes do not increase when you give the okay to developers to increase the boundaries of our city? When cost gets to the point where I cannot afford to stay in my house anymore, what will you have in place so that I do not have to look for a roof over my head outside of London? 1 minute.
Wow, that was a big question for 1 minute. I have, worked extensively with low-income people for my entire career. I am a low-income person myself, coming out of poverty, a family, one single person with disability. It's interesting that I think it's a little bit backwards there, because as we develop more and more responsibly within the urban growth boundary, fix the London plan and its zoning issues, build as of right buildings that are appropriate for service levels available, housing costs will go down. We also can protect our property tax investment because we have a AAA credit rating from Moody's. London as a city has done a fantastic job. Thank you, Elizabeth Pelosa, thank you, Josh Morgan, on budgeting, on having money available, on being able to offload costs, and not having to turn around to the taxpayer and say, you take care of this, because really we're all in this together, we're all struggling, and we'll come out of it united as a city. And we'll keep looking out for people like my campaign manager who lives in rent-sharing income housing and getting more opportunities for her and people like her. And people like the person who asked the question, because they matter just as much as the people in the room as well. So,
Thank you.
I just want to say I love how this question is framed, because I thought it was going to be a don't raise taxes question, and it's actually a don't do urban sprawl question, so I really appreciate it. As we know, the more single family homes that we have at the edges of the city, the higher the cost burden on people living in the urban area. So I completely agree with how that question was framed. I I personally am frugal and I know how to manage a budget, and I would, if elected, spend people's money wisely. But I do believe in order to do that, the way we get affordability, both in our taxes and for our housing, is through medium and high density. We need density. That is how we will see a better return on investment and a better return on people's tax dollars. So I would love to work with developers on improving medium and high density within the primary transit area, not within the urban growth boundary, because we need people who are in medium and high density buildings to be able to get onto transit and to be able to use their cycling infrastructure. Again, being able to use things that improve affordability, because then they don't need to own cars and it reduces our emissions. So thank you.
Thank you. Paul Michael?
If what Mr. McCall says is true about our city and our 5-star credit rating, I think that just goes to prove that we are not spending money on things that are important, that we can spend money on. If we have access to good credit, we can spend these dollars, and we choose not to. That's unconscionable, number one. There are programs like if this question asker owns their home, we can set up a property tax stay, and what would be their taxes can be banked and can be used as a lien against their home if they choose to live and die in their home, and then that will have to be paid back to the city when that house is sold. That's an option that we could do. And I'd hate to be the bearer of bad news, but your taxes will go up because services need to be paid for, and if Mr. McCall is right, we've got a great tax or a great credit rating. We should spend that money on important things.
Thank you. This is a question from Thomas T., and it will be starting with Skylar. Thank you, sorry. As London continues to grow, alternative modes of transit are increasingly an issue. If elected, how will you address rapid transit and active transportation?
Yes, again, so coming from the environmental sector, I would really love to invest in cycling and public transit, and also in walkable spaces. We know that when we invest in cycling infrastructure, the cyclists follow. We saw with the Colburn tracks and the Dundas tracks that once they were implemented, ridership went up. It's safer for everyone to have separated and connected bike lanes, because cars are on the road and then cyclists are in the bike lanes and pedestrians are on the sidewalk, and there's less drivers on the road. So even if you're not a cyclist, you will benefit from having a really safe and connected cycling grid. So would love to invest in that. I already kind of talked about public transit, but then also for pedestrians, there are lots of people that I chat with who walk everywhere. So again, I would love to see better snow removal services and a prioritization of removal of snow from sidewalks, bus routes, and cycling infrastructure prior to removing it from streets. So would love to invest in all those things, because it makes the city better for everyone.
Paul Michael?
Yeah, as a cyclist, I can tell you that paint is not a very protective measure to a car turning right when they're looking left. So yeah, absolutely. Was the original question, should we have more bike lanes? Because if that's the answer, then 100%. We should make it safer for people to not be in their cars. Investment in our public transportation, as I've said for years, has been grossly underfunded and cut on purpose. We need to have our doctors not drive their cars downtown and put them on buses and make them go downtown to their jobs with everybody else, the working class people. And the more people use the service, the cheaper that service gets. And hey, if they don't want to be on a bus, unfortunately we live in Canada, some of the year is great for cycling, and the other part of the year is probably great for snowshoeing. But it's up to your employer if they let you take that to work. That's pretty much it. Paint is not a protective measure for cyclists.
Okay, thank you. And then this will be the last question from our advanced questions from the audience. Oh, Jeremy, I'm so sorry.
I would think you wouldn't
I
miss me,
know.
but
My apologies. I am so sorry.
that's okay.
No, it's not good.
All right, I'll wait for the card. Perfect. I mean, we have 10 kilometers of protected bike lanes last time I looked. We should have at least 30 or 40, so we're behind, but we are working on it. As Paul Michael Anderson said, paint is not a bike lane. I took a ride with London Bicycle Cafe, Andrew Hunniford, downtown Blackfriars Wortley. Got hit almost 3 times. Signs don't work, paint doesn't work. My kids are not allowed to bike ride because it's just not safe for them. Josh Morgan will bring north, south, east, west major arteries if he is elected and I'm elected. That is awesome to hear, super exciting. I'd like to focus on riding through neighborhoods as well. As I mentioned, small increases are great. If you haven't participated in the mobility master plan in this room, go online, it's easy to find, fill it out, because that will dictate much of what happens no matter who wins this election. I asked Cheryl, what could I do to make transport more popular? She said, take it and post about it. You know, I have a lot of followers online, and I'm trying to go out of my way to get on a bus, go for a bike ride, share that with people, motivate them to follow the same. And then boom, right card, never mind. I have more to say, but that's okay.
Thank you. Okay, so this will be the last question, and we will start with Paul Michael, and then we will go to Jeremy, and then we will go to Skylar. Where is it? There's been a lot of development on and around ESAs and parks in Ward 11. As City Councillor, what will you do to protect our parks, ESAs, Thames River, and green space?
Other than follow what is that's in the London plan to protect our environmentally sensitive areas. I mean, I use the coves a lot too. It's a great resource. It is probably adjacent to Super Test site, which is like an old abandoned paint factory. So we can't develop there. We need to rewild it, and which is a horrible way of saying just let it be there forever. So it doesn't help with building new housing, but our water table, if we don't have a protected water table, we don't have a future on Treaty 6 for anybody. Right? Thanks.
Thank you. Jeremy?
Card? Okay. We need to protect our watershed. We need to stop deforesting along the Thames River. We need to move ahead with decommissioning Springbank Dam. Just about everything's gone wrong there. Planning, COVID, designers dying. It's a whole long list. And really, we need to listen to our experts. We have brilliant people at City Hall. And as councillors, I think we can do a better job of listening to them and relying upon their guidance. And we can also engage community stakeholders better. I can confirm I've had more meetings with developers than previous Ward 11 representatives, and really bringing people to the table and solving problems collaboratively with our governance expertise, with their building expertise, and with the environmental expertise will resolve these problems amicably, efficiently, and with the intention of helping people who want to preserve conservation, helping people who need a place to live, because really they both matter now and in the future.
Great, thank you. Yes, we have some wonderful ESAs, so environmentally significant areas across the city to enjoy, so if you haven't checked them out, please do. And we absolutely need to be protecting them. I live near the coves, and that is one of our ESAs, and there is going to be a medium density, well, depends who you ask, medium or high density building going up just on the edge of it. And unfortunately, there was some community pushback, and it went to the province and got overturned, so it will be moving forward likely if they sell the property. So there is a delicate dance, I think, to be working with developers, because now with the provincial government and with new regulation, a lot more I think will be pushed forward. So definitely need to be working with the development community to try and save as much ESA space as possible, because once it's gone, usually you can't replace it. I'd actually like to see more ESAs across the city, so I've had conversations with people about reusing the River Road golf course potentially as an ESA, so I'm going to put that idea out there because I would love to see more green space. But if elected, I would definitely prioritize making sure that we maintain all of our existing ESAs. Oh, thank you. Sorry. Thanks.
Very good. Okay, we've been doing really, really well because you all are awesome. We will do one more question from the box, and then if we have time, we will do some audience questions. Does that seem fair? There we go. So I believe it's Skylar's turn to pull.
I lost track. I
I
don't
know.
know. I'll take it, but I lost
it's your
track.
turn to
Okay.
start something.
Okay. Is it?
No, Jeremy's turn.
Oh, okay. Hands up. Okay.
You guys can share the same question if you really want.
Yeah, we'll rip it in half.
This one's for you, Paul.
Thank you.
Is this one for Paul?
No, it's okay. I picked it for you.
We all want to work together.
Hopefully it's the one that you like.
Okay, so we'll start with Jeremy, and then we will go to Skylar, and then we'll go to Paul Michael. London's employment rate hit 6.1% this past July. High job vacancy rates remain, along with a lack of skilled workers or skill mismatch in the city. How do you plan to fill this gap?
Back to 2 minutes. Nice. Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
All right, great question. This actually pertains to my regular full-time employment. First thing I'd like to clarify, skilled workers, foreign trained workers, apprenticeships, that's all provincial. So if I sat here and said anything beyond, I would talk to people from the province who like talking to me about it. I'm lying to you, so I'm not gonna do that. The city can create feasible transportation. The two biggest barriers to employment in London right now are transportation and childcare. As I mentioned already tonight, transportation does not get people to work who cannot afford a car. That's a reality that the minute we accept it, we can start making that better and we can start chipping away at this number. And then people with kids need to have reliable, affordable places to put their children before they go to work. It might have been pre-COVID, we were the second most expensive city in Canada for childcare, about $1,100 a month for full-time childcare. So if you have 2-3 kids in childcare, boom, there goes your paycheck. Why do I know this? Because I took 9 months off because I had 3 kids in daycare. I couldn't afford to do that, so I went on, did some online schooling, and I just made myself more employable until one of them got into to JK, and it became a little bit cheaper. We can work with the LEDC to attract employers that match workforce needs and to fill downtown vacancies. We work with the LEDC in my regular job right now. There's a lot of great people there. When they combine with mayors and they approach large employers who can pay good wages, who can offer benefits, who can be flexible, that leads to better outcomes. We can facilitate ideas, conversations, and teamwork. Right before COVID, the Employment Sector Council held a big summit at Wonderland Gardens, brought all the local employers, and they asked them, where do you struggle? People were sitting at a table with $1 million salaries, writing on a big pad, saying, this is where I can't staff people. All those ideas came together, it went into a report. As Skylar mentioned, it became a great big binder that got stuck on a shelf. And that really didn't make anything better. Small Business Recovery Working Group, that is gonna be great. Small businesses in Ward 11 have not been looked out for quite some time. People have said, we need a BIA. They've said, starting a BIA is really hard. So that's really not gonna make anybody's lives better.
Thank you. Skylar?
Awesome. Yes, so I would definitely like to start by working with the business community to understand their business needs and how we can retain talent. I have been chatting with various business owners and folks that work at Downtown London, LADC, the Chamber of Commerce, to just better understand this as an issue. And a lot of them say they want to keep staff here and they want to keep graduates here, and that has to do with building a world-class city that people want to live in, that they can afford, that they can get around the city, like Jeremy said, with transit and with cycling. And so then again, the role of the city and city council is to build a city that employers are able to use as a selling feature when they want to retain local talent. I'd also like to advocate to provincial and federal levels to recognize international credentials. I know that there's some movement on this, but we've seen again with the staffing shortages in our healthcare system. There's lots of nurses and doctors out there, but they just might not have transferable or like recognized international credentials. So I think that would be a really great way to fill that gap, and work with post-secondary institutions to try and keep students here after they graduate who have either skilled trades from Fanshawe and some of the other local colleges, as well as academics from Western. So I would work with these various partners, if elected, to hopefully try and keep more staff here, build a great city, and then also fill those gaps.
Paul Michael?
I think I'd like to take this question and use it to thank our hosts, because today I was at a job fair hosted here at the Goodwill, and I'd like to thank them for the excellent work that they do. As a younger person, they helped me find my first employment when I was a teenage dad, so their work that they continue to do is super important to people in the neighborhood I grew up in. The bigger part of this question is that the things that we can do more, I think we can We can work with our upper levels of government and their ministers with immigration so we can bring more Canadians, new Canadians, into, where we have these skills gaps. And if you were to look at, the treaty that we are all standing on in London, Ontario, in the words is that we have to provide housing and an economy for the people that live here. That was a part of our obligations. So we need to work with our Indigenous neighbors to help stream those kids into programs so we can fill those skills gaps. Because if they don't feel welcomed, that's our failing, and it's also our obligation to let them be welcomed into what could be an excellent world of work. So we need to enforce our government's obligations to the 94 calls to action. I'm just going to keep thumping on that because that's what they need to do. Thank you. That's my time.
Thank you. Now, if I take my mic out, can I? Does anybody in the audience have a question that you would like to ask? Okay. Oh, look at that. We have a few. Yeah. So we'll only be able to do two. I don't think I can go very far. Okay, so the gentleman in the red hat, if you could come up here and you can ask from this one. If you don't mind stating your name and who the question is for, and then everybody will have an opportunity to respond.
Sure, thank you. The name is George Sinclair. The question is a recreation-related question, a Ward 11 question. So I'm not going to ask candidates about the fact that the green space behind the high school is unavailable to the public during the summer. And I'm not going to ask them to respond to this idea that Farquharson Arena, we're going to lose that in a couple of years. But I would like them to address the issue of the Thames pool, which has not been available to the community this year because of issues they discovered supposedly this spring when they went to put water in it and found they couldn't put water in it. But what I want to know is what steps Ward 11 councillor will take to ensure that it will be available next year, because we know the construction of the Rideout Street Bridge will still be going on. There's no way they'll complete that by the spring of 23, unlike what the sign says. But having that pool available for 23, I think, is a priority. And I think the Ward 11 councillor ought to take that, put that on their list, high on their list of things to ensure that the community has for next year. So it's less of a question than a statement, but if there's a question there, you're free to answer it.
Does anyone want to start? And okay, we'll start with Paul Michael, then we'll go Jeremy and Skylar.
Yeah, it's an important resource for our neighbors who use it for exercise and recreation. My number one priority is helping the people who are currently living in Thames Park and dying in Thames Park. The construction is a hassle, but I beg you to use your empathy. And I'm sorry you might have to give up another summer of not being able to exercise or spend time with your friends and neighbors. But I think the priority is to have our neighbors not be living in it. So I'm sorry that it's awkward. Construction can only go so fast, but the priority is to have people not living in the park. And I'm sorry. I hope that answered your question. And sorry.
Oh, okay, thank you. Jeremy?
Yes, I am very glad this question came up, as this was a issue that hit our family very hard this past summer. We spent over $300 on a summer pass for swimming, hoping that our children would learn to swim. 6 days after we made that purchase, the pool was closed for the summer, and it was closed for, I think, the second or third summer in a row. That was pretty crushing. Obviously, there was a good job of some questions being asked and some solutions being made forward. There was an offer of free swim passes. I was the one who was able to convince people at City Hall to offer free transit to other other pools because swim passes don't get you into a pool unless you can get to the pool. Thames Park is a great asset to have. It's still $16 to take your family swimming, which is really not affordable to a lot of people given 8% inflation, food's going up 13% next month. So we should fix Thames Pool and we should make it more accessible to people who want to use Thames Pool because we're not currently getting the job done. I spent a couple years trying to bring a splash pad to Ward 11, trying to get a place for kids to play that's not owned by the school board. As Mr. Sinclair said, we're not allowed to be on South Field because of lawsuits, which is really sad and unfortunate, and kids go to Mansfield and Tecumseh to play, and that's really not helping Ward 11. We have kids running around in the street and on people's yards because there's really nowhere else to go. So let's make Ward 11 a fun place to be outside and to be active and to have recreation. Kamoka has outdoor exercise equipment at their park. London doesn't have that. St. Thomas has it, but London doesn't have it, right? So let's just make, Josh Morgan's gonna invest $4 million into parks as part of his platform. Windsor invested $33 million into parks. Windsor. Oh, sorry, that was a red card. You threw me off there. And so, Old South, Ward 11, great place to be outside. We don't have sports east of Warncliffe. We don't have sports leagues. Let's bring sports leagues for our kids. Let's bring people together. I know hundreds of dads who want a place to start and somebody to call the shots and to get the ball rolling. And if I do anything, it's get the ball rolling and support people with what they need. And there's so much more that can be done. We have a great park staff, but we don't make parks a priority.
Thank you. Skylar?
Yes, thanks, George. So, like you said, construction is currently happening underway at the right-out intersection where the bridge is. So, unfortunately, since I don't work in aquatic services or in the construction department, I don't know exactly what the timeline is, but I would work and rely on city staff to do their due diligence and their best efforts to try and get it done. I would also love to see the pool open up next year. So, whatever is possible to do to expedite it. I'm not sure if there are going to be supply chain issues or construction delays. But to your point, really finishing the bridge and then making sure that the pool, whatever repairs that were needed to be done, get completed before opening next year is an incredibly important priority. And again, whoever is elected will start in November, so they'll have about 7 months to try and make sure that it comes online before the summer happens. But I think anyone here would be really willing to make sure that that community resource is open and available because it is one of our great community assets, and not everyone has a pool in their backyard. So being able to access the Thames pool is incredibly important for the community.
Awesome, thank you. And for our last question, can you come up right here? Thank you. Yeah, because my cord doesn't go that far.
Hi, good evening, folks. My question is addressed to all three of you, actually, about wheelchair accessibility in the city. I live in Ward 11. I'm a resident. I quite often like to go for walks and stuff like that, but areas are just not wheelchair accessible. And I'd like to know what your vision is to make sure people in wheelchairs and mobility aids have equal access to businesses and recreation.
Thank you. Okay. So we'll start with Jeremy and we'll go down the table.
Sure. Green card. So my dad was an RCMP officer in 1971. By 2008, he was in a wheelchair. By 2016, he was a double amputee. This hits very close to home for me. I work with an agency that supports people with disabilities, and really, it's not an accessible world. We have this thing called the AODA that's supposed to be in place by 2025. Is that a yellow card or is that a nose itch? Okay. And we're so far behind. Everywhere you go in Ward 11, people don't have buttons to open the door automatically. Our sidewalks look like waves in a pool, and people are having to go on the road in order to travel from point A to point B. And really, the people in wheelchairs with mobility issues tend to be seniors, persons with disabilities. They're not big taxpayers. They're not public participators because they have hard times getting around, and nobody makes them a priority. I advocate for people with disabilities, low-income people, people with barriers, until I'm blue in the face. And really, if I get elected, it'll be another thing that people will feel he is doing everything he can. That's really the best that I can do, and that's what I'll do for you if you elect me in October.
Yes, thank you for the question. Earlier in my campaign, somebody reached out to me who, she's a caregiver for her partner who uses a wheelchair to get around, and she asked if I would go out with her and do an accessibility tour in Ward 11 to try and see what it was like and better understand the impacts that having an inaccessible community does for somebody. So we had a great discussion. We walked around a plaza, like 3 out of 17 of the businesses had a push button. The rest you couldn't get into unless somebody was going to come and help you. Even if they opened it, the doors weren't the right size. You couldn't really get there. And we've already discussed the issue with paratransit not coming frequently enough and not being properly funded. Again, some of the discussions we had were trying to push AODA. Again, it's a provincial document and it is supposed to be done by 2025, but the city has the ability to at least work with the community, both the businesses and people who own facilities, to try and make those updates. So sending out information and letters saying, hey, did you know that your building's not accessible and you're supposed to have it up to code by 2025 is something that I definitely would be happy to work on and spend taxpayer dollars on. As well, just trying to make sure, I'm not sure if all city buildings and infrastructure, if they're already all compliant for the various people with disabilities, but I think first priority would be making sure that all city-owned assets are accessible in a variety of different ways for the community. And then again, we talked about paratransit, but the person who I went on a tour with talked about how you pretty much just have to sit around and wait, or you don't know if you're going to get bumped, trying to make that a more regular schedule and actually responsive and show up on time and get people to where they need to go on time, because that's only fair.
Thank you. Paul Michael?
Yeah, having our infrastructure be non-accessible is it's like a human rights violation. We need to, when the city is addressing its infrastructure gap, when we are trying to replace our old sidewalks or our buildings, when we're trying to race to finish those things, if they are not accessible to every one of our neighbors, then we have failed, and we are legally responsible for our people. And to be able to cut corners and have hard curbs or have doors that all of our neighbors can't fit through, people should be held liable for that. And in our building of new infrastructure, it has to be there, and that's it. The fact that it hasn't been done earlier is that's a important failure of previous leadership. Thank you.
Okay, yep, thank you. I think what we'll do now, because we have just a few minutes left, I will give you each maximum 2 minutes to do a closing statement or wrap things up from your perspective. Okay, so we'll start with Jeremy and we'll go down.
Since I did the opening statement for the last time.
Sure, okay then. Would you like to start, Paul Michael?
Sure. Thank you, everyone, for coming. My 2 minutes of saying thank yous starts now, so if I go left to right, I should be able to get most of you. I might not win this election, but I would like to be the voice for people who aren't represented in the backgrounds of my colleagues here. So if democracy is for everyone, and access to that should be, please vote in my closing arguments. Be nice to each other, and it's not just for our rich neighbors. Having a safe community, our neighborhoods are for everybody, whether they're currently unhoused or they're retired hockey players in mansions. They should be safe places for everyone, and that is what I want to focus on. And my goal, if elected, is to provide that to every one of my neighbors, because dignity is important, and that's where we should start. Your property taxes might go up, but I don't want to have any more of my neighbors die, and that's why I'm doing that. So thank you very much for your time today. And for all of you being here. Thank you.
you. Skylar?
Awesome. Yes, thank you very much for all attending. This is the first of many of the 14 debates, and there's, I'm sure, going to be a bunch of mayor ones. So we really appreciate you taking the time to plug into the local democracy, and hopefully we can beat the provincial voter turnout. So tell your friends to go vote, because I'd love to see that happen in London if we can push that. But yeah, I hope that this opportunity for us to have a conversation and let you know a little bit more about our priorities and how we deal with issues was able to answer all of your questions. But if not, like I said in my opening statement, I would love to connect with all of you. So please reach out via email or on social media, because I'd love to have a conversation about what matters to you and how we can address it. I do think that I would bring a good perspective, and I have a lot of experience working with City Hall through the work that I've done and the community experience that I've had. So I do think I'd be able to hit the ground running on day one, and I would love the confidence of your vote when you go to cast your ballot at the advance polls or on election day. I also think adding diverse voices to our council offers better decision-making ability. So would love to see more people running in both this ward and in other wards who are able to bring those voices forward. And another area that I didn't really have a chance to touch on, but a lot of my leadership model and style is more collaborative based. So running the London Environmental Network as executive director, it gave me the opportunity to work across the nonprofit sector and with businesses and with institutions to try and tackle some of our largest issues. And my model is really to listen to expert advice, to do evidence-based decision making, to listen to research, and then also consult with the community and constituents. So I would love, again, to chat with you so I can hear what matters most to you, but know that if you do cast a ballot for me, I would bring that collaborative leadership model to council. So thanks for coming.
And Jeremy, thank you.
Take a page out of Skylar's book and start my timer. I got a lot to say, and the opening statement wasn't that great. First thing that I want to say is that this is a cool opportunity. It's a great thing that we're doing. I'm always a feedback kind of person. I mean, maybe next election, maybe the people on the stage could have some input in terms of when it's scheduled. When it was scheduled, there was 2 candidates, myself and Skylar. I was given a date and time. My wife rushed here from work. I had to find a babysitter. If I wasn't here, maybe Skylar's by herself. If she couldn't make it, maybe we have an empty table. So maybe in the future, we can all give some input on when the best time it is for us. I understand everyone's volunteers, and that's fine. A little bit about myself. In 2021, I hate saying this, I was named the Humanitarian of the Year for the City of London, just because I show up. I'm relentless, I listen, I take good feedback, I take bad feedback. I give everybody a voice in what's happening. I don't tell people I have the answers. I tell them I have the ability to listen, to understand, to prioritize, and to collaborate, and to make best decisions. There's 15 people voting on major issues, and so no matter what I want, if there isn't another 7 people wanting the same thing, it really doesn't matter what I want. Over the last 14 years, I've collaborated all over London with a lot of current councillors, a lot of people that are up for re-election. We work very well together. We tend to get a lot done that benefits a lot of people. Raised $170,000 through my group Dad Club London for people who needed it, organizations who needed it. In total, I did the math because I had no idea, it's close to $1 million raised through paid and volunteer roles, because our city deserves to be better, and because we all have a role to play, not just the people at City Hall, not just the people who get elected, who are still considered a part-time job. It's everybody. And when we bring people together and we listen to them and we make what they think and what they feel a priority, even if we don't like what we're hearing, we all benefit. And so when you put me on Ward 11 City Council seat, you know that if you live in Ward 11, I'm going to listen to you. You know that if you live in London, I'm going to listen to you. I reach out to councillors in other areas. I get really great responses. Didn't even look at me.
Thank you so much. I'd like to thank all of the candidates, not only for running for office, but for your patience this evening. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you also for running and taking this step to be serving in our communities. I also want to thank each of the audience members for coming. Thank you so much. You were a wonderful audience and very respectful. And to all our volunteers, again, and Rogers and Goodwill, thank you so much for all the work that you've put into doing this. And finally, don't forget to vote. Okay, that's October 24th. There will be lots of reminders, so please go and do that. We still have time in the room, so feel free to talk to the candidates after, and what some of our volunteers are going to be doing is clearing up, so don't mind that activity going on behind you. Thank you, get home safely, and have a good evening.